مبعوثين إن هو إلا رجل افترى على الله كذبا وما نحن له بمؤمنين قال رب انصرني بما كذبون قال عما قليل ليصبحن نادمين فأخذتهم الصيحة بالحق فجعلناهم غثاء فبعدا للقوم الظالمين ثم أنشأنا
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Did anybody identify the recitation that was played at the beginning? Or at least narrow it down, if not identify exactly which Qari or Rawi it was. Okay, we've got a response in the chat that says Ibn Kathir, which is a good guess or a good try. Anybody have a different answer? So if you were not at the beginning, maybe just recite the beginning part of the surah that was played. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين. So the first person is Ibn Kathir. Some other people are saying Qalun, and correct, it will either be one of those two based on the application of Sila. Might have had the Sila Umu instead of Wum, and we did that lesson last week, which narrows it down to Ibn Kathir and Qalun. Those are the only two that have the application. Ibn Kathir must have it. Qalun is an option. You will either have the application or read as normal without the Sila, like Hafs and others do. So what other application could they be, and could you hear to differentiate and separate them, to know exactly it's Qalun or it's exactly Ibn Kathir? Ibrahim, you said here perhaps Qalun. Why would it be Qalun and not Ibn Kathir? Because of the tawassit. Great, mashallah. There's the tawassit that was made, and Ibn Kathir will have only qasr. So if it was qasr that was made, then it could have been either Ibn Kathir or Qalun, and you wouldn't really know the difference unless there were other applications that you could have heard, or maybe Farshi changes. But yeah, I did with Mad, and the recitation was also with Mad, and that would now confirm that it was Qalun and not Ibn Kathir. So as you can see, it's becoming a bit more intricate now, not as simple and easy as before. Before, you just hear one application and immediately you know, okay, it's that particular Qari. That was when you did chapter 1, we did the single applications. We're now busy with the combined applications. So before we start with today's lesson, just revision of what we've done. And again, I've shared it in the group just before we started the lesson, as always. So if you hear somebody read Bashira wa Nadhira, Bashira wa Nadhira would be which Qari or Rawi? Kawthar?
It would be Khalaf.
Khalaf an Hamza because of
The Because there's no ghunna
It
on
would be
the
no ghunna on the wow.
idgham.
Correct. If you have بشيرا ونذيرا بشيرا ونذيرا Ibrahim.
This would be warsh because of the taqleel on the raf. No.
تقليل ترقيق of the ra.
الترقيق والترقيق.
If we have شيئا اتخذها
Also warshikh because of the Madeleine tawassut on the Madeleine in front of the handwriting.
Okay. الذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك
Susi.
Okay, and if I read والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك
Also Susi.
it can't be Susie. First one was Susie. The second one is somebody else. Oh.
Warsh.
How do you know it's Welsh?
Tool.
You pull them out to the length of tool. So in that case, Warsh will join Susi and make an ibdal. Yuminuna, because it's the fa kalima of the word. And that's how you know it to be Warsh and not Susi. Susi would have qasr in the mud only. سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر.
It's also warsh because of the taghlid in the lam after the ta.
Correct. القارعة ما القارعة.
Also warsh.
It won't be Welsh.
قاري الكسائية.
بكسائي معنى of the هاء التأنيث. Okay, in the recitation that we had today, we had the sila, which we said was either Ibn Kathir or Qarun, one of those two. So those are some of the applications we've covered so far. There were others as well, but that was most of them. Then we look specifically at mad, and that was in the combined application. So when you hear qasr, you won't know exactly what it is. But if you just hear qasr in the mad, then you can narrow it down to which of the qurra. Can narrow it down to if you hear qasr. بما أنزل نسير.
قالون Ibn Kathir, Tur and Susi.
Great, right? I gave you a hint of how to remember it last week. The first three qurra, but it will be one rawi that would be excluded from that, which would be Warush. Okay, because Warush and who else has tool in the mudud?
Hamza.
So if you have tool in the mudud, you know it's either Warush or Hamza. And if you have tawassut, then who can it be? It's tawassut in the mudud. Your mic is muted.
Okay, so it's Qalun, Duri, Ibn Amir, Asim, and Kisai.
Correct. So it would be the remaining four after the first three. Ibn Amir, Asim, Hamza, and Kisai, but you exclude Hamza because he has the tool. And then Qalun and Duri, they have two awjuh, so they'll also be included in those that do tawassut. Okay. So in the revision, we covered one aspect of imana, which was the imana of the ha'ut ta'nith, which is only for Kisai. So that's just one of the 4 applications that we're going to look at where you have imala. So today's lesson is a little bit different from before. Normally we have 2 sections that we cover, right? So 2 of the topics in the book. So there'll be the first one an exercise, the second one an exercise. Last week only did 1 because the notes on Sila was a bit more in depth than the others, and so we just Sila last week. Today we're actually only going to do 1 of the chapters in the book, but within that chapter I've included 3 subsections. So it could have actually been 3 separate lessons, but then it would have made the course a bit long, so I've decided to combine it into 1. So we're going to have 1 lesson on 3 different applications, but then unlike before we have an exercise on every single application. Here there will be just 1 exercise on all those 3. So I think this will be our most interesting lesson so far, because now I also need to combine it with other applications that we've done before, especially the mudud. Okay, especially the mudud. So as mentioned in part 1, the application of imala, according to a general precept, is found in 4 different categories of words. 4 different categories of words, and one of them was previously discussed. The others will now be looked at. The one that we did before was what application and for which qari? إمالة of the term مربوطة for Kisai. So that was in chapter 1. It was only 1 qari that applies it. So in the remaining 3, there will be multiple qurra that will apply it. So here when you're speaking about the first category, it's the first of the remaining 3. Right? The first of the remaining 3 categories are those words ending in an alif maqsura, which is an alif that is written as a ya. This category is thus called dhawatul ya. Dhawatul ya. So we have your example, the word istawa. Istawa. You can see that it's written as a ya at the end, but we don't read it as a ya, we read it as an alif. Istawa. And that's why on top of the ya is the dagger alif symbol to indicate that that's how you read it. But even without that symbol there, you should know that you read this as an alif and not as a ya. The way to distinguish it in the writing is that the ya will have dots underneath when it's pronounced as a ya. Alayhim, for example, there would be dots under the ya. Over here, there's no dots. That will indicate that you read it as an alif. Istawa. Hudahum. Over here, this is the ya. That's how it's written over here. Right? You can clearly see the ya that's written. Istawa. In this word hudahum. And now it's written in this way because of the attached pronoun that comes afterwards. So this over here is the ya that we are referring to. And again, to indicate that you read it as an alif, there's the dagger alif on top. But again, even without that, you should know that you can read this as hudahum. So the normal reading for Hafs is to read this alif with fath, with an upwards down. Istawa hudahum. We mentioned when we did the first chapter on imala that you have imala sughra and imala kubra. The minor imala, which is taqleel, the major one, which is imala kubra, which is just called imala. So we're not going to discuss imala sughra. To make it a bit easier and not so complicated in this chapter, we're only going to look at imala kubra. We're not going to look at imala sughra. The reason for that is the one that applies it primarily is warsh, and we've already covered enough rules through which we're going to identify warsh. Warsh has the most rules that we've done so far, through which that riwayah can be identified. Abu Amr will also have imala sughra, taqleel at times, but not as much as warsh. So therefore, we're only going to focus on the imala kubra. And the reason for that is you have imala kubra in the riwayah of Hafs in the word Bismillahi majariha. So you know how to read it and you know how it sounds. Whereas you don't have taqleel at all anywhere in the Quran for Hafs. So the word ad-dunya also falls under this category, even though the alif is written as mamduda and not maqsura. Okay, the alif, there's an upward alif at the end, not how it's written here in the previous examples. But despite that, the word dunya will also fall under this category of the Dhawatul Ya. In the likes of Hudan, you can see there's a tanween on the dal. So the alif will be omitted when you're reading through. Hudan lil muttaqin. Hudan lil muttaqin. Right? So in that case, reading through, then you don't have the imala. Nobody will read with imala in that case. But when you stop on it, then the imala will be applied. So those that read with fath will read huda when stopping, when reading waqfan. Those that do the imala will have hudi. They will have hudi. Then you have the words ila, hatta, and ala. You can see that they're all written with the alif maqsura at the end. All three of them, they are written with the alif maqsura at the end. But these are exceptions to the normal rule. And nobody will read with imala. None of the Quran, none of the 7, none of the 10 will read with imala in these three words. There are other words as well mentioned in the Shaltubiyya, but I've only mentioned these three because they come the most often. The others don't appear that much. So that's the discussion with regard to this particular category, the Dhawatul Ya, right? Very simple way of looking at it. There's a alif that's written as a ya at the end. So we call that the Dhawatul Ya, and imala will be applied by those who make imala, and yet it will be Hamza and Kisai. As you can see, it's not just one Qari. Before it was just Kisai having imala in the time marbuta. Yes, both Hamza and Kisai. Both Hamza and Kisai, they have imala in this category. They have imala kubra. So they'll read istawi, hudihum, ad-dunyi, hudi, ila, hatta, ala. The last three are exceptions. And so imala in all the previous examples, but in those last three, they have fatha as normal. That's the first category. The first category, the Dhawatul Ya, we have it written as an alif written as a ya, Hamza and Kisai will have imala. Then the second category are those words ending in alif maqsura. Ending in alif maqsura, like before, but now preceded by a ra. So you must first look for the alif maqsura at the end. That makes it the Dhawatul Ya. Then you must look what comes before. And if you have a ra, then it becomes a separate category. If before that alif at the end, the alif that's written as ya, if before it is a ra, it becomes a separate category. This category is called the Dhawatul Ra. Those words that have a ra. For example, Bushri, Bushra, Bushri. You have Bushra, you have the alif at the end. Alif is written as a ya, and there's a dagger alif on top to indicate that you read it as an alif. Now you look what comes before, and there's a ra before. So now from the Dhawatul Ya it becomes the Dhawatul Ra. Another example, Ishtarahu. This over here, that's the alif maqsura. That's the alif that's written as a ya. Here, because of the attached pronoun that comes at the end, it's written differently as compared to the first one. Now before that ya, there is a ra. So from the Dhawatul Ya, it becomes the Dhawatul Ra. So as you can see, the Dhawatul Ra is a subset of the Dhawatul Ya. What does that mean? That there's a ya at the end. So it is the Dhawatul Ya. But because of the ra, now becomes a different type of the Dhawatul Ya. It becomes a subset of it, becomes the Dhawatul Ra. So the applications will be different. Who had imala in the Dhawatul Ya? Just mentioned on the previous page.
Hamza and Kisai.
Hamza and Kisai. So as you can see, because I have it in the Dhawatul Ya, and yeah, there's also a ya at the end, right? Because the Dhawatul Ra is a subset of the Dhawatul Ya, they will necessarily have it here as well. So Hamza and Kisai, they also have imala in the Dhawatul Ra as they have it in the Dhawatul Ya. So why do we separate the two? Is because now in the Dhawatul Ra, there will be somebody that will join them. Amongst the Qur'an, there will be some that will join Hamza and Kisai in having imala over here, and that will be Abu Amr. So Abu Amr also joins him in having imala. So the Dhawatul Ya is only Hamza and Kisai. The Dhawatul Ra is again Hamza and Kisai, but also Abu Amr. Hamza and Kisai, but also Abu Amr. So the first one just had 2 of the Qur'an. The Dhawatul Ra will have 3 of the Qur'an. Hamza, Kisai, and then also joining them, Abu Amr. So Abu Amr will have Huda, you would have hudahum, you would have istawa, but then you would have ushri and ishtari. Whereas Hamza Kisai, they would have hudihum, istawi, ushri, ishtari, imala in all of them. Then the third category of words are those ending in a ra, maksura, preceded by an alif. So yeah, there's a lot to take in over here. Ending in a ra. The Arabic is for that ra mutatarrifa, the ra that comes at the end. There must be a ra in the word and it must come at the end. It must be mutatarrifa. Then before that, there must be on that, there must be a maksura, it must be maksura, must be a kasra. There must be a kasra on that ra, and then also preceded by an alif. So yeah, we'll see that in the example here. We have so we have the ra, it is mutadarrifa. It is coming at the end. The next thing is that the ra that comes at the end has a kasra. It makes it maksura, and then it's preceded by an alif. So the ra mutadarrifa, maksura, you'll have imala in this. Okay, so an-nar would be the normal application, fath, an-nir would be the imala, an-nari, an-niri. Abasarihim, here you have the ra. Okay, seems like it's not the end of the word, but remember that this hum is simply an attached pronoun. So you could have had that word abasar without the hum. Just that in certain cases, there could be an attached pronoun that comes with it, but still this would now be the end of the original word. The original word is just abasar, so that would be the end of that particular word. So the ra is mutatarrifa. Then it has a kasra, and before that is an alif. In this case, the alif is not written in the rasm as over here, but in the pronunciation it is there. That's why they have the dagger alif over there. So this would also fall under this category of the ra mutatarrifa maksura. So you have abasarihim as the normal recitation of fath as in hafs. Those that have imala would have abasirihim, an-niri, abasirihim. Okay, so you have the ra mutatarrifa maksura. The third category in which you're going to have imala, and who will have imala is Abu Amr and Duri Kisai. Abu Amr, Duri Kisai. So you have Abu Amr, the entire Abu Amr, the Qari. That would necessarily include both Duri and Susi. Duri Basri as well as Susi. Then you have Kisai and his two Qura'ahum. The two rawis of Kisai are whom?
Abu al-Harith and Duri Kisai.
Abu al-Harith and Duri Kisai. So you can see the split. Duri Kisai will have imala. He will have an-niri abasirihim. So it's not mentioned here, but by inference, Abu al-Harith will have what? Ikram? Abu al-Harith will have what? He will have fath. It will be the same as hafs. Abasarihim an-nari. Because it's not mentioned here as having imala. And as I said, we are ignoring those that have imala sughra. Okay, so those are the Qur'an is going to have imala over here. Just Abu Amr is entire Qari, and then just one of the rawis of Kisai, only Duri, not Abu al-Harith. So here you see an-nari. Okay, you have an-nari. You can see there's the kasra on the right end. So what happens if you choose to stop on a word like this? We come to the end of a verse maybe, and you have a ra like this at the end of the verse. Now when you stop, you're going to put a sukoon. You're going to put a sukoon on the word. So what are you going to do now? You're going to look at the sukoon and therefore not do the imala, or you're going to look at the origin and say, okay, because it was a kasra originally, you're going to have the imala. So sometimes the Qur'an look at the circumstantial state, sometimes they look at the original state, sometimes they consider both, and then you have two ways of reading. In this case, however, they consider the origin. They don't take into account the temporary sukoon, and therefore you will still have the imala even though you're not going to read the kasra. So you read through an-neri, but even stopping, you'll still have imala an-ner. You still have the imala, even though the maksura, the kasra, has been replaced by temporary sukun. But because it's temporary, right, you'll still have the imala. Okay. Here's an example here. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ وَقُودُ النِّيرِ. You'd have the imala at the end, stopping on that word. Now, we have a raya, and when you study tajweed, there are the rules of the ra. We know that the ra is one of those letters that sometimes read with tafkhim, sometimes read with tarqiq. So for hafs, the normal rule, aqudun nari. If I read through, I read the kasra. The ra will be read full or flat with tafkhim or tarqiq.
ترقيق.
With tarqiq because of the kasra on the ra. If I stop waqudun na and then I read the ra at the end with a sukoon, will it be read full or will it be read flat?
تفخيم.
Full.
Be read full. Because now you have a kasra. When you have a kasra, you need to look what comes before. What comes before in this case would be a fatha. So the ra with the sukoon preceded by a fatha will be read full with tafkhim. So those that have imala, when you read through waqudun neri, you will read through, and the ra will be tarqiq. Will have tarqiq because of the kasra on the ra. But when you stop, what's going to happen now? Waqudun nir. Well, you have tafkhim or tarqiq. You can see that when you have waqudun nar, you have the upward sound. Okay, and therefore the ra will be full. When you have the imana, that upward sound is now inclined towards a kasra. You're inclining it towards a kasra. That's the definition of the imana. So because of the inclination towards the kasra, towards the ya, now the ra will be read with tarqiq. Waqudun nir. And you can see it just sounds better as compared to waqudun nir. To try and read with the imana, then have the ra. Those two sounds don't go together. There isn't the harmonization of the sounds. So you'd have the imala, and because of that imala, the ra at the end, even though there's a sukoon, it will be read with tarqiq. Waqudun nir. So note that the ra in this case will be read with tarqiq due to the imala. When you're reading through, it will be read with tarqiq due to the kasra. But when stopping with a temporary sukoon, it will still be read with tarqiq due to the imala. If you're reading with fath, however, then you'll have tafkhim. Similar to lean prior to ra. What do you mean? Yeah, for example, khair, correct? If you have the word khairun, you read through, you read with tafkhim due to the dhamma on the ra. But when you stop, you'd put a temporary sukoon. Okay, so normally look what comes before, and in this case is a fatha before, which would have made it full, but here you look at the ya sakina. So in this case, the lean also has that istifal, that flatness and that lowness in the sound. Khayi, your sound is going down. So because of that, the ra at the end will be read with tarqiq. So correct. That is similar to that. Okay, because of the imala having a downward sound, the ra at the end will be with tarqiq, same as in khair. The sound is also going down in the a part, the lean part, and therefore the ra will have a sukoon. So good observation, that. So that was category 1, category 2, category 3. What's going to make interesting is how to combine them. Looking at how the Qur'an combine all of these applications. Okay, so summarize in this table. You have the Watul Ya, then you have the Watul Ra, then you have the Ra Maksura. Should be the Ra Mutatarrifa Maksura. But we don't have space for all of that in the table. So we're just going to refer to it as the Ra Maksura, the Ra that has a Kasra. It's not mentioned here, obviously. But an-naru with a dhamma, there will be no imala. An-nara with a fatha, there will be no imala. Condition is that the ra must have a kasra. The imala is due to the kasra. It's due to the kasra on the ra. So if it doesn't have a kasra, then there will be no imala. Okay. So looking at the qurra, individually you have hamza that applies imala. So you have hamza applying imala, you have it in the watul ya. You also have it in the Watul Ra, but he does not have it in the Ra Maksura. So you'll have istawa, as being istawi. You would have bushra as being bushri, but you would have an-nari as an-nari, not an-niri. We have imana in the batul ya, imana in the batul ra, but not in the ra maksura. Istawi, bushri, but an-nari. Then you have kisai. So the entire kisai will have imala in the batul ya. The entire kisai will have imala in the batul ra. But then they will split when it comes to the ra maksura. The first rawi of kisai is whom?
Abu Harith.
Abu al-Harith. Okay. So you can see it's not mentioned over here. Abu al-Harith doesn't have the ra maksura. You think I should leave it like this or do it as such? Leave him out, put his name there but with a strike through to show that he doesn't read the ra maksura or the imana. Still going to edit this book and have a second edition. So maybe you can just give your input. What do you think is better? To leave his name out or to put it there, but have a strike through to indicate that he doesn't have the imana?
Blank.
So the reader should then know that the other Rawi is Abu al-Harith. It's not mentioned here. So he doesn't have imana in the ra maksura. It would only be duri kisai. So Abu al-Harith will have istawi, bushri, and an-nari. Same as Hamza. But in duri kisai will have istawi, bushri, and neri. You'd have imana throughout. You have imana in all three categories. And remember, Kisai also has imana in the ta marbuta. So duri Kisai will have imana in all four categories. Will be the only one, the only qari, the only rawi, to have imana in all four. You will read also al-qari'i, according to the one madhab. Khati'i. Coming to that now, the next one is Abu Amr. To answer your question, you can see he doesn't have imala in the batul ya. Does not have imala in the batul ya. You'll only have imala in the batul ra, and he'll have imala in the ra maksura. So you'll have istawa, bushri, and an-neri. Okay. What you maybe heard is that at times, not all the time, but at times in the batul ya, you will have taqleel. You will have the minor imala. You would have that if the word is on the scale of fa'ala, fi'la, or fu'la. That's a general rule. And then also if it is in certain surahs where the verse ends, always have the ya maksura, the alif maksura at the end, then you also have taqleel in that. Okay, but as I said, I didn't go into taqleel to make it a bit more complicated. And I think it's complicated enough as it is, because it's the first time maybe most of you are encountering this. So that was looking at the table, looking at all the individual Quran. Now we're looking at the different applications. So you have the batul ya going down. It will be Hamza and Kisai, but not Abu Amr. Only Hamza and Kisai, excluding Abu Amr. The batul ra will be all of them. All of the ones that have imala. It will be Hamza, Kisai, and also Abu Amr. And in the ra maksura, you don't have Hamza, you don't have Abu al-Harith, but you have duri Kisai and you have Abu Amr. So if you have imala in the batul ya, you can narrow it down to Hamza and Kisai. It will be either Hamza or Kisai. If you have imala in the batul ra, it will be either Hamza or Kisai or Abu Amr. If you have imala in the ra maksura, it will not be Hamza, it will not be Abu al-Harith. It will be narrowed down to duri Kisai or to Abu Amr. To either duri Kisai or to Abu Amr. Are there any questions before we go on to the application? Or are there any points that you'd like me to explain again? As I said, the lesson today was actually looking at 3 different subtopics. We have imana in the batul ya, the batul ra, and the ra maksura. Normally, they have an exercise on each one, but to save time, we're going to have just one exercise combining all of them. So you're going to highlight in yellow when you're ready if you want to, the Dhawatul Ya, in green, the Dhawatul Ra, and in blue, the Ra Maksura. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes, maybe 3 minutes, inshallah, to now complete this. And then we'll go through it, inshallah. Okay, hopefully we can begin. Can anybody give me the first verse? So you need to tell me what's the word in which the imana will be, and then you tell me which category, the Dhawatul Ya or the Dhawatul Ra or the Ra Maksura. And the Dhawatul Ya will be yellow, the Dhawatul Ra will be green, and the Ra Maksura will be blue. Mahmouda?
The first one, Sheikh, is was Salwe, Hamza and Kisai with, it will be the Dhawatul Ya.
So that will be yellow. Okay. Somebody else, the second verse? Ibrahim?
هدى وقفة.
That would be what category?
ذوات اليد.
Dhawatul Ya. Ibrahim Hassan, third one.
Sorry, الدنيا. This will be ذوات الياء.
Ramadan, the fourth one.
نصارى
That would
ذوات
be what
الياء
category?
ذوات الياء
Dhawatul Ya. Dhawatul Ya, are you sure?
yes ذوات
What comes before the Ya? What letter comes before the Ya?
no.
So it is Dhawatul Ra.
ذوات الراء.
It will be green. Okay, the application will be different to the previous ones. Abu Bakr, number 5.
النار
That would be what category?
ومكسورة.
Maksura. Okay, somebody else, the verse 6.
شيخ النار 2.
And that would be the word to the Maksura. Sheikh Abdul Razak, verse 7 as well.
Sheikh, you have I'm not sure about the first one, but وَلَنَّ الصَّارِ.
That would be what?
That will
Which
be
category?
Sheikh
Tawatur. Okay, so is there another word in this verse that will have imana besides an-nasara?
ترضى Sheikh.
Tardi. That would be what category?
Sheikh, that will be ذوات الياء Sheikh.
Tawatur, yeah. Okay. And Kawthar, the last verse, verse 8.
I think it's the Ra Maksura and Ashabun Nir.
Okay, that's the Maksura. Is there another word?
I'm not sure. I'm gonna say no.
Mahmuda?
Bale. Hamza Kisai Zawatul Ya.
Zawatul Yavi. Okay. So just before we do the reading, to understand the logic behind the sequencing of the verse, you have the Watul Ya, then you have the Watul Ya as well, but this one will only apply to Waqfan. And that's why it's the last word of the verse. If you had to read through, there will be no imala over there. Then you have Ad-Dunya, which also falls under the Watul Ya, but there's the exception in that it's written with the Alif Mamduda. Then the next one is the Watul Ra. The next one is the Ra Maksura. Then the next one is the Ra Maksura, which will be done Waqfan, to show you that even Waqfan, you're still going to have the imala. And in each of those verses, there was only one word. Right? To make it easy, there's only one word. And in the last two, there was multiple, right? Combining. So you have the Watul Ya, and then also the Watul Ra. And then you have the Watul Ya, and also the Ra Maksura. And if you had taken maybe longer verses, there might have been examples where you can find we'll have all three: the Watul Ya, the Watul Ra, and the Ra Maksura. Okay, but I think this will be interesting enough. So those that highlighted in yellow, the Watul Ya, who will have the imala there?
Hamza and Kisai.
Hamza and Kisai. And Abu Amr will have what? But then you have the Watul Ra. We have it here highlighted in green. Who will have imala there?
Hamza, Kisai, and Abu Amr.
All of them. All that have imala will have it in the Watul Ra. Hamza, Kisai, joining him also Abu Amr. And in the Ra Maksura, we will have who?
Abu Amr and Duri Kisai.
And who will have Fath? Of those that make imana, who will have Fath here?
Abu al-Harith.
Hamza and Abu al-Harith. Okay, so that's how you can differentiate between them in a way it's possible. Then the other main application through which you can differentiate them will be the mudud. Right? There is mudud in certain of these verses. So you have Hamza as one that has imala. Hamza will have what in the mudud?
Tool.
Will have tool. So if you have tool in the mudud, it has to be Hamza. So that I can separate Hamza, for example, from Kisai in the second verse over here. Okay. Then if I have the Mad Munfasil, there's some that have Qasr, others have Tawassut, others have Tool. So Hamza will have Tool. Kisai will have Tawassut, and Abu Amr will have Qasr. But then under that, you'll have Duri. You'll also have the possibility of Tawassut. But if you have Qasr, then you know Abu Amr. If you have Tool, you know Hamza. If you have Tawassut, it could either be Kisai or it could have been Duri Basri. Okay. So أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأنزلنا عليكم المن والسلوى. That can be narrowed down to whom? You won't be able to identify exactly who, but who can it narrow down to?
Hamza Kisai.
Could be either Hamza or Kisai, but you all know whom exactly. أولئك على هدى. So of those that have imala, we're reading only for them. Of those three qurra, we did read for now. We're looking at Hamza, Kisai, Abu Amr. Who was that? أولئك على هدى.
Abu Amr.
Abu Amr, because it was fath and not imala. أولئك على هدى. Who is that from?
Hamza.
Hamza. It was imala, which makes it either Hamza or Kisai, but if you listen closely to the mad, it was two. أولئك على هدى. That would be tawassut, and that would be Kisai. And the same in the next verse. أولئك الذين اشتروا الحياة الدنيا. With fath would be Abu Amr. أولئك الذين اشتروا الحياة الدنيا. With tawassut, and imala would be Kisai. أولئك الذين اشتروا الحياة الدنيا. With two, and imala would be Hamza. إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والنصارى. Of the three Qur'an we're looking at, that recitation was for whom?
Abu Amr.
Is it only Abu Amr?
All of them.
All three. Abu Amr, Hamza, and Kisai. There's nothing else at all separate and differentiate them in this verse. They all have imana, and that's the only change for them. Number 5. Somebody's mic is on. Okay. Verse number 5. أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. Again, looking only at Hamza, Kisai, Abu Amr, which recitation was that for? أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون.
Al-Layth.
Abu al-Harith. Okay, because it was tawassut, so it can't be Hamza. It can either be Kisai or it can be Abu Amr. Then you had the fath on the nar, not the imala, and that will only be Abu al-Harith. Because Duri Kisai will have imala, Abu Amr will have imala. أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. That is whom?
Hamza.
Hamza. 2 and then the fath. أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. That's for whom?
Kisai.
Is it only Kisai? Is it the whole of Kisai?
Duri Kisai and Abu Amr.
Abu Amr and Duri Kisai. They both have tawassut. Then the imala would be not Abu al-Harith but Duri Kisai, and then the entire Abu Amr. ثم أضطره إلى عذاب النار. ثم أضطره إلى عذاب النار.
Susi.
Is it only Susi?
And Duri also. Duri Basri.
Duri Basri. Why? Because there was Qasr. So Qasr, out of those Qur'an that we're looking at, will only be Abu Amr, and Abu Amr has imala, which we had in the end. ثم أضطره إلى عذاب النار.
Hamza.
No. ثم أضطره إلى عذاب النار.
Abu al-Harith.
Abu al-Harith. There was tawassut, so it's Kisai or Abu Amr, but then there was fath, and out of those it will be Abu al-Harith. ثم أضطره إلى عذاب النار.
Duri Kisai
Is it only Duri Kisai?
and Abu Amr.
Not the whole of Abu Amr?
Duri Basri.
Duri Basri. You have tawassut, so you're looking at Duri Basri and looking at Kisai. Then you have the imala, so of Kisai, Abu al-Harith will fall away, it will be Duri. It will be Duri Basri and Duri Kisai. ثم أو ضره إلى عذاب النار.
حمزة.
Hamza. Again, the difference between verse 5 and 6. Verse 5, there was a muttasil, and in the Ra Maksura. Here it was munfasil, and in the Ra Maksura. And you can see the munfasil is more complicated. You only have tawassut and tul. Here you have qasr, tawassut and tul. ولن ترضي عنك اليهود ولا النصارى حتى. What's that for? Abu Bakr.
Kisai.
Is it only Kisai?
All of them?
It's not all of them. But it's not only Kisai either.
Kisai and
Abu Amr.
Many people talking. Mahmuda.
Is it Hamza, Kisai, and Abu Amr?
That would be all of them. It's not all of them. Hamza and Kisai. The Watul, yeah, we have only Hamza and Kisai. You don't have Abu Amr. Right?
Okay.
So Hamza and Kisai, then they also necessarily have it over here. So it was Hamza and Kisai.
Okay.
وَلَن تَرْضَى عَنْكَ الْيَهُودُ وَلَا النَّصَارَى حَتَّى.
Duri Kisai?
No, we said Kisai was already with Imana in both. And I did Fath on the first one and Imana on the second one.
Abu al-Harith.
No. Who was excluded? Of the three, who was excluded when I did the Imana?
Abu Amr.
Abu Amr. So now when I did the Fath, it was Abu Amr. So Abu Amr will have the Fath and in the Imana. Also note you have added the word Hatta at the end. It's also written with a Alif Maqsura, but none of the Qur'an have Imana. That's one of the exceptions that we had. فلمن كسب سيئة وأحاطت به خطيئته فأولئك أصحاب النار.
That will be Hamza.
Hamza, you're half correct. Is it the entire Hamza?
Hamza and Kisai.
You have to be more specific. You can't just say the entire Qari, because the individual Rawis read differently. So if you're looking at Hamza, you need to tell me is it Khalaf or Khalad. And if you're telling me Kisai, you need to tell me is it Abu al-Harith or Duri Kisai.
Okay.
Just read again, please.
Okay, I'll read it again. فلمن كسب سيئة وأحاطت به خطيئته فأولئك أصحاب النار.
خلاد.
خلاد. How do you know that, Sheikh? ما شاء الله.
بغير غنى شيخ.
سيئة.
Because بغير غنى to have been خلف. I read with غنى. So
yes,
it is Khalad. Okay, so Hamza and Kisai have Imala. So when you hear the Imala, then you narrow it down to Hamza and Kisai. Then over here read with Hunna, so it can't be Khalaf, because Khalaf has بغير غنى. Then at the end, you have a now and I read with Fath. So it can't be Duri Kisai, because Duri Kisai is Imala. It will be either Abu al-Harith or Khalad. But then there was a tool over here, which makes it Khalad. Subhanallah. فلا من كسب سيئة وأحاطت به خطيئته فأولئك أصحاب النار. That would be
Sheikh,
yes. Ikram.
أبو عمر.
Abu Amr. we had Fath on the first one, so it can't be Hamza or Kisai. It can be Abu Amr, and then we had the Imala, and Abu Amr has the Imala over here. فلمن كسب سيئة وأحاطت به خطيئته فأولئك أصحاب النار. Was that before?
Turi Kisai.
Correct. Nasir, how do you know it's Turi Kisai, not Abu al-Harith?
Because of the
Because-
Maksura.
Because the ballet, that is the Watalia, and it has the Anir, the Maksura.
So near Bali, it's either Hamza or Kisai. But then on the Mudud at Tawassut, so it can't be Hamza, it can only be Kisai. And then on An-Nir, you would have the Imala, which makes it Turi Kisai. But it was Abu al-Harith, it would have been Ashabun Nar. Okay. So as I said, very interesting lesson today in terms of how the applications combine, especially considering also the Mudud. And remember that this is looking only at 3 of the Quran. If you had to look at all the Sab'ah, there would have been many more applications as well. One should have been here with different applications with Fath and Taqleel. There's also Amanu, would have had them at battle over there. So there have been other applications as well. So I don't have much time, but if you can just give me some few minutes extra, because I think it will be a bit interesting. Okay, so I'm going to read either Hamza, Kisai, or Abu Amr. Okay, you must try and figure out which of the 3 it is. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. خلق الإنسان من علق. اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغي أن رآه استغني إن إلى ربك الرجع أرأيت الذي ينهي عبدا إذا صلي أرأيت إن كان على الهدى أو أمر بالتقوى أرأيت إن كذب وتولي ألم يعلم بأن الله يري كلا لئن لم ينته لنسفعا بالناصية ناصية كاذبة خاطئة فليدع ناديه سندع الزبانية كلا لا تطعه واسجد واقترب.
Kisai.
Okay, but besides the Hamza, the Ta marbuta, in that, which was a giveaway, how else could you know that it was Kisai?
توسط in المدود.
Together with the Imala. Imala in the Watul Ya as well as in the Watul Ra. And both in this surah, and there's the Wasut as well. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والليل إذا يغشى والنهير إذا تجلى وما خلق الذكر والأنثى إن سعيكم لشتى فأما من أعطى واتقى وصدق بالحسنى فسنيسره لليسر وأما من بخل واستغنى واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسر وما يغني عنه ماله إذا تردى إن علينا للهدى وإن لنا للآخرة والأولى فأنذرتكم نارا تلظى لا يصلاها إلا الأشقى الذي كذب وتولى وسيجنبها الأتقى الذي يؤتي ماله يتزكى وما لأحد عنده من نعمة تجزى إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى ولسوف يرضى.
أبو عمرو.
كوثر.
I was going to say Abu Amr Sheikh because of the.
Okay, but Abu Amr has Duri and Susi. So was it Duri or was it Susi?
I think it was Susi.
Why was it Susi?
Because it had qasr.
What does duri have?
Duri has both, Sheikh.
So just by looking at qasr, you can't differentiate them. Qasr could have been duri, could have been susi. So there's a different way of differentiating them. Anybody else? Is it duri or is it susi? There's two applications that we did, which can differentiate here duri from susi. And I read the two verses again. We can differentiate them. وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى. That's the one verse. The other one is الَّذِي يُؤْتِي مَالَهُ يَتَزَكَّى.
Is it the taqleel, Sheikh?
They both have a taqleel. They don't read differently in the taqleel.
Idgham didn't have idgham kabir.
Correct, mashallah. So that makes it what?
Duri.
Duri.
Duri. If it had been susi, that verse would have been وَكَذَّبْ بِالْحُسْنَى. And the other verse would have been الَّذِي يُؤْتِي مَالَهُ يَتَزَكَّى. This is the ibdal of the hamza sakina. Would have been for susi. Okay, so that was duri, basri. I didn't know it was not kisai because there was no imala in the watul ya. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوي والذي قدر فهدي والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء نحوي سنقرئك فلا تنسي إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفي ونيسرك لليسر فذكر إن نفعت الذكر سيذكر من يخشي ويتجنبها الأشقي الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيي قد أفلح من تزكي وذكر اسم ربه فصلي بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقي إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى.
That's Khalad, Sheikh.
عندنا شيخ خلاد ما شاء الله. عندنا درس خلاد شيخ.
Sheikh first and foremost, the tool, Sheikh.
The tool would make it Hamza. Could have been either Khalaf or Khalad.
And because of Sheikh of the idgham.
The idgham was what?
And the sa.
The idgham was made how? With ghunna or without ghunna?
It was made with ghunna, Sheikh.
And that would make it Khalad. Okay, looking at the sakta, that won't necessarily differentiate them. Because both Hamza, both rawis of Hamza, Khalaf and Khalad, they could have read the same in terms of how I did the saktas. Yeah, فَذَكِّرْ إِن نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى without the sakta for Khalaf, then فَذَكِّرْ إِن نَفَعَتْ with the sakta. So there's both options. And similarly, I made sakta on the lam ta'arif. Khalaf must make it there. Khalad has the option of making it there. So the saktas won't differentiate them. It was the hunna that separates them. So as I said, quite interesting, alhamdulillah, in terms of how all the applications come together. And mashallah, we've now covered the entire usul that we want to cover. We've covered now all the usul of the sab'a. So we're coming close to the end. There's only 3 more lessons. Next week, we're just going to look at some of the farsh, as well as just review everything that we've done. Okay, then the week after that will be the thalatha, and then the week after that will be the ashra kubra, inshallah, which will be the last lesson. Although it will be the last lesson, there's something else I'd like to have, and it's the first time I'm mentioning it, but I'd like us to have a jalsa at the end. I mentioned about the ijaza that you can take the exam for at the end of the course. So instead of me just sending it to you electronically. I was thinking it would be nice if maybe those of you that are in Cape Town, if we could come together, we could meet and I could actually give it to you in person. I have an actual physical copy of the Ijaza for the book. And then those that are obviously in other cities and across the world can maybe just join us online, inshallah. So we're ending on the 23rd. The last lesson is scheduled for the 23rd. So I'd like to have the Jalsa on the weekend because then people will be available. But I don't want to have it the weekend immediately after because I want to give you some time to actually take the test. So I'll give maybe 3-4 days after the end of the last lesson for you to study and prepare and then take the test. And that will also then give me some time to prepare the ijazat, inshallah. So the week after that, it will be the 5th. It will be Sunday the 5th, inshallah. So I mentioned it now already, so maybe those of you that are in South Africa but not in Cape Town, I know some of you like to come to Cape Town for holidays, so if you are coming, then maybe you can join us, inshallah. Okay, we are over our time, so we'll end there. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.